Somebody else has asked just around this, and we'll finish up on this question with this point, right? Does the panel think that the continued innovations you're discussing will be inhibited by an increased reluctance for individuals to share personal information under GDPR, which may impact data mining, etc.? A lot of innovation relies on developing personalized products that require that information. I think this is really true. This is an area that my business is getting into more and more heavily. You know, I know from my own experience and my friends and family's experience, the whole kind of world where you just, you know, we're all having these conversations at the minute about, I'm sure Facebook is listening to me. I'm sure I mentioned that I was interested in a lawnmower, and 5 seconds later, Facebook is trying to sell me a lawnmower, right? And I mean, we all know that's absolutely bloody true, right? So I think, but my question here is that, do we think that this is all going to slow down? Do we think that GDPR legislation is going to slap us all down and we're all going to have to go back to a much more bland experience where, quite frankly, the consumer's going to have to work harder for what they want?
Interesting.
That one's open to anybody who dare have a go at it.
David, can I jump in? As something I feel very passionately about.
Sure.
The impact of GDPR has happened, and we all got prepared and we all got compliant, and it lived through. I would say we are seeing exactly the opposite. People want to share more, and they actually want to do that in a secure environment where they can trust their data with the companies who are actually taking all the necessary measures to be able to stick to the, you know, authenticity under which conditions they are sharing that data. So I always remind people there are two really, really key points here. Being open with the user, what the data is going to be used for. That was a big change with GDPR, and every company got forced to do that. But the new generation companies are built that way from scratch anyway. So you are transparent about your usage of data. And secondly, you have to heavily invest in the security of that data. In our case, for example, the entire data set is pseudonymized. What that means is that although we know your phone number, your email address, your name, and your address and everything, the actual data set is completely disconnected. So that even if the system is hacked and the data is stolen, no one can connect the actual data set back to your user details, which is a simple system for security purposes. But it's really interesting to observe that in many markets, we operate in 150 markets, we are seeing that people are increasingly willing to share that data as they can trust organizations about it.
And I don't think it's just trusting the organization. That's a big thing. So we have to invest in that, in our brands and all of that kind of stuff. But I think also it's like, having experienced bits of it, I think our consumers, like, they want more personalization, a bit more committed, so they don't see all the rubbish that they're not interested in, but they actually get a more focused thing. Ed, let's just, I've got to move on to the next question, but I've got a funny feeling you might have been the tech minister when GDPR was first mooted, right? So did it work out how you guys thought it was going to work out?
Well, I was the tech minister when we brought in the e-privacy directive, which is why you get this annoying pop-up about cookies.
It's your fault,
on the website.
Okay, great.
And look, I think this is a really important topic, and I think there are two aspects to it. I mean, clearly, by the way, my son is playing Xbox downstairs. If you can hear some kind of crazy, if you think there's a massive party going on in my house, it's my son shouting at his mates on Xbox. And the dog has opened the door, so that's why I can't shut the door.
No problem.
So anyway, I digress. You know, heavy regulation is a bad thing in my view. I'm not against regulation. I think it's important. And politicians often regulate in a vacuum. They don't actually talk to businesses about how day-to-day it happens. Having said that, the GDPR came in during the techlash, and the GDPR is now seen as a kind of gold standard consumer protection regulation, to the extent that California has effectively adopted it, and probably the US will eventually adopt it state by state, if not at the federal level with a Democrat administration. And, you know, there has to be this dialogue between tech and government. And I think it's always right for politicians to say, we represent the public square. So, for example, the online harms bill coming down the road about trying to regulate content online, I think is perfectly legitimate. You know, if tech people just say, oh, you don't understand tech, totally the wrong response. It's perfectly legitimate to have that debate. The second thing I want to say, which is a point I picked up because I'm on this communications and digital select committee on the House of Lords, and we've been taking evidence, is actually, I think this will spawn regulation. I think Tugce was kind of hinting at this, spawns other ecosystems. So you could have, for example, moderation as a service platforms where companies are created, could be billion-dollar companies that provide moderating services for platforms where people are at, you know, they could be moderating as we speak, the Zoom chat for our thing. You could have loaded up the moderating software. So I think that, and that could potentially be a public good, that, you know, it could help businesses get online knowing that they have a moderating as a service software backing them up to, you know, keep the crazies off, if you like. So I think that could also spawn a lot of interesting kind of tech support ecosystems. Just, you know, similar to the cloud. You know, the cloud was there to support the massive growth in tech companies, and I think there will be similar software service companies coming up to support tech regulation.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right there. Your point about California taking on GDPR, I feel that pain on a daily basis. Our Naked Wines headquarters in the US is in California, in the Napa Valley, obviously. And CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act. Wow, that's a tough one to navigate. It's like they took GDPR and shot it in the arm, right? You know, something. So, yeah, thanks for that, Ed. Anyway, okay, so we're going to move on to we're going to move on to oh, sorry, Will, go on.
Yeah, sorry. I think it's just an interesting point just to evolve on that a bit, because David, you touched on it before, which is we're talking about regulation, but actually a lot of this is really sourced in the kind of consumer mindset, where realistically consumers are happy to give, or in general, consumers are happy to give data where they are extracting value from it. You know, if I can get personalization as a result from this thing, fantastic. I can see why and kind of how that data is used. And this you know, initially puts a stronger focus on companies to protect and secure that data, but ultimately actually it becomes part of the ecosystem to show to customers that you can provide value for it, especially when you think about the generational shift that you have between you know, people who are you know, maybe like your son playing Xbox right now, Ed, and, you know, very, very conscious of what data is you know, has longevity and has a static property versus what is ephemeral like Snapchat and deliberately meant to be deleted and disappearing. Yeah. You know, having that education around what data is you're generating, what you're giving it to, and then having the expectation of a company to do something valuable with it is going to be so important in kind of driving that that process of innovation actually forward rather than slowing it down.
Yeah, and I think people are smart. I think, you know, the understanding of the benefits of giving your personal information and stuff like that and what you get out of it is increasing. We're highlighting that more. So yeah, I agree.